Dear respected Thai, dear friends, so we're at the summer solstice, and it's the 21st of June, 2025, and this is our last day of the family retreat. Stable heart, clear mind. So one way to know whether you have a stable heart is give a Dhamma talk to the children. It's a good way to test. I can see sometimes my heart is going in the direction of not so stable, but then I know to come back to my breathing or invite the sound of the bell, and then I take refuge in my sister at the big bell, and we support each other, and slowly we hold a space together. And so for me, it's a great joy to have the kids here. It's one of the benefits of being a monk. You get to be an uncle to many, many children. And you don't have to change even one diaper. So I wanted to talk a little bit today about balance, because balance is very important for our path as parents, as practitioners. And the Buddha, the Four Noble Truths, the truth that there is suffering, recognizing that in the present moment, that there's a cause of suffering, there are conditions and causes that have given rise to the ill-being we experience, and that there's a way to remove the causes and conditions that give rise to suffering, and a path we can walk on that that cuts off those causes and conditions. The path we call the path of happiness, because happiness and suffering are not separate. So that those Four Noble Truths are really about establishing balance in our mind. In Buddhist psychology, we talk about the mind as having the aspect of we call storing, and the aspect we call mind consciousness, where our emotions, our thoughts, everything we experience in our mental life manifests. We call it mind consciousness. And an easy way to think about store consciousness is it's all those emotions, feelings, thoughts you may have had in the past, but they're not manifesting right now. You're not experiencing them right now. So most of us are not angry right now, but not one of us believes that we don't have the seed of anger inside, because we've experienced what happens when anger manifests. And so that's a way of thinking about store consciousness. It's where all the potential seeds are in our consciousness. And when conditions are sufficient, the seed can manifest. So seeds, when there are conditions for anger to manifest, we hear something, we see some image, or we think some thought, and we touch that seed of anger, and then it comes up and it manifests like a flower in mind consciousness. But it's a difficult flower, the flower of anger. It tends to raise our pulse. We feel adrenaline coursing through our body. It's the kind of emotion that comes about because when we want to protect ourselves, we feel we're under attack. And so the emotion of anger raises our heart rate. It gets us ready to run, to flee, to get out of the situation that is threatening our life, right? And so that emotion plays a role But what the Buddha realized was that most of the time we're not in a situation of life or death. And yet we are angry all the time because we are touching that seed of anger. Our fear of what could happen, our fear of what people say, people judging us, criticizing us, who we are. That brings up fear, and it touches our seed of anger. And so we feel there's an injustice that's been done. Somebody has said something that's not true. There's wrong perception. And we get very angry. And so our thinking is feeding the anger in our stored consciousness. And when it gets enough nutrients, just like a seed in the soil of the earth, when it gets enough nutrients, it will sprout up when the conditions are sufficient, and then it takes over. So anger has the quality, it doesn't just stay there like a little flower, it tends to take over all of our mind. And it becomes like a hell realm. Our present moment experience is like a hell realm. So yesterday in my Dharma sharing group, we sang the song. The realm of the mind is mine. I can choose. I can choose where I want to be. Both heaven and hell, I know equally well. The choice is up to me. The realm of the mind is mine. I can choose. I can choose where I want to be. Both heaven and hell, I know equally well. The choice is up to me. We don't sing that song often in Deer Park, but I think it's very apropos, this teaching. So, with the insight of these Four Noble Truths and looking into the causes of suffering, we actually learn in what way we can choose what we want to manifest in our mind consciousness. That is up to us. And I like to say, and I think Tai also would say, once you're on retreat, you can no longer say you didn't know. I don't think there's much comfort in saying you don't know. Anyway, but certainly when you're on the retreat, now you know. With mindfulness, you can decide whether you get angry or not. You decide whether you feed that seed of anger. An emotion lasts only maybe a minute and 30 seconds. Once you have that initial condition and that seed is touched and it manifests in your mind, if it doesn't continue to receive nutriment in the form of our thinking and our perceptions, then that emotion will just go away after a minute and maybe 40 seconds. So if it's still there after a minute and 40 seconds, that means we're continuing to feed it. And so with mindfulness, we can look and see, how am I feeding my anger? How am I feeding my jealousy? How am I feeding my craving? Because those are all the seeds that are there in store consciousness. And they are what causes the imbalance in our mind, these strong emotions. There's seeds like sadness and despair, jealousy, hatred. Fortunately, though, there are other seeds. There are seeds like compassion, understanding. There's a seed of mindfulness. And what we are doing in a retreat like this is learning how to touch the seed of mindfulness through daily practice. Our way of eating, our way of washing our bowls after we eat, our way of walking, our way of sitting. Every part of the day, we practice to bring this energy of awareness to what we're doing. And so that seed of mindfulness can get a little bit stronger because you can change the qualities of the seed in your store consciousness. So that's the good news. If you take the point of view that everything is fate, it's already predestined, all the seeds are fixed, like you're born and you just have fixed set of seeds, and you're just going to live them out however they're already preordained. And then you can take the other kind of extreme view. And even in the Buddhist time, they had this kind of view that nothing matters. No matter what you do, this will happen, that will happen. There's no reason or cause to any of it. So people, even in the Buddhist time, they fell into those two extremes. And we can often fall into those extremes as well. We let ourselves be a victim of our circumstances. We feel like we are helpless. We get up in the morning, we get some tea, some coffee, we read the news, we try to get our kids together to get to school. Somebody shared about we're having trouble with transitions. Anybody ever heard that phrase? A parent? Having difficulty with transitions? That was a new one for me. I was thinking of sometimes having to get my roommate out of bed to go to sitting meditation. I was like, maybe I'll start saying he has difficulty with transitions. So we are overstimulated. We have all this input, and it's like we have to drug ourselves just to get through the day with caffeine, with the news, stimulation, all these things. It's not balanced. And then no wonder we come back at the end of the day and we just collapse in a heap. And then what do? Well, it used to be we pick up the remote control, but now we pick up maybe our phone or our smart TV. I found an article yesterday. I thought it was very, very interesting. It's from the Australasian Journal of Philosophy. It's published 26th of May, 2025 by Rachel L. Brown and Robert C. Brooks. And the title is Smartphones, Parts of Our Minds or Parasites? You know, there's an orange parasite that's native to the Valley of Deer Park. It's called dodder. And right now it's kind of dying off, so you don't see it so much. But there's some right behind that door there. If you look out, you can see a dying mass of it, or Brother Phap is, kind of growing over the bushes there. And it cannot photosynthesize. It's orange. And so the seeds, they get embedded in the branches of the bushes in the chaparral here. The laurel sumac, the buckwheat, the native buckwheat. And it actually it's kind of like the movie Aliens. You remember that movie? And you have the thing inside and it bursts out. You remember that? It's kind of like, ah! So it's kind of like that, you know, it just bursts out of the very branches of the tree, and it sucks the energy from the plant. And it uses that to grow, and it becomes a whole mass that covers over and then continues to grow into other parts of the plant. So and if a parasite is too powerful, it will actually destroy the plant that gives it sustenance. Anyway, I thought it was just for fun. I will read the abstract. Smartphones are often assumed to be obvious examples of cognitive extension. We offer reasons to reject this assessment, arguing that modern smartphones and the apps installed on them are not cognitive extensions after all. Modern smartphones are designed to manipulate the intention and behavior of users in ways that further the interests of the corporations that built them. In this, they are importantly different from resources typically associated with the extended mind, such as notebooks, Scrabble racks. I thought that's an interesting example. Scrabble racks. Notebooks, Scrabble racks, and maps, which are not designed to manipulate or exploit users, even if they can be corrupted to these ends in some cases. It is not plausible for a part of the cognitive system to be designed to thwart the goals and desires of the user in the way a smartphone is. Given this, we argue modern smartphones are better understood as external to, but symbiotic with, our minds, and sometimes even parasitic on us, rather than as cognitive extensions. Thinking about them in this way better reflects the true nature of our relationship with them and the ways that the relationship can both benefit and harm us. Does this resonate with anyone? Nobody? Yeah, raise your hand if it resonates with you. Okay. So there's something there. It also resonated with me. You know, I remember I asked the Sangha, because in our community we don't like just have our own devices. So that's one boundary that we put on our life as monastics. So if we want to use a laptop or a smartphone for some reason, then we need to bring it out to the whole community. And so I have to ask the Bhikshu Sangha. It was, I think, 2013. I was planning as the main organizer for Thai's tour in Spain, which ended up being Thai's last major tour in another country. And the organizers were very frustrated because it's very difficult to contact the monks and nuns. We don't check email very often. And I remember that fall, we went to Thai's last tour. It was 2013 in the United States. And we met with many tech leaders at Mark Benioff's house in the Bay Area. And Thai gave a talk about the horse is... the story of a man who's riding a horse. And the horse is galloping very, very quickly. And there's another man standing there, and he wonders, like, where is this man going in such a hurry? So he yells to the man. He says, "Where are you going?" And the man yells back as he's going by on the horse. He says, "Don't ask me, ask the horse." And so Thai gave that Dhamma talk, that technology is the horse. Where are we going? Why? If you give the human beings the option to create a parasitic electronic device that will keep you connected night and day so that you can buy things, watch things, in order to feed the interests of large, wealthy corporations, do you think they would voluntarily decide to do that? To create such a thing? You think so? Paritratas, yes. So that's a question I think I want us all to hold in our hearts. It's something we're holding in our hearts when we create the Thich Nhat Hanh School of Interbeing. Somebody asked us the question the other day, so what will be your rules about smartphones or iPads or devices in the school? And so we're looking into schools, there's some schools which have, they not only ban electronic devices during the school time, but actually the family has to make a commitment that they will not use it during the whole time of their education. I heard about one school like that. And you can read online, I think it's somewhere up north of LA in the mountains, like a nature school. And you can read the beautiful articles by the young students who have spent years and years not using a computer or a smartphone. And they're still alive. Somehow, they didn't get into a medical emergency. They didn't have trouble sleeping. They didn't all these things that we fear we cannot do anymore without our smartphones. They're able to do it just fine. So that's something that we're asking ourselves actively. What do we want to, what kind of future do we want to build for our children and for ourselves? Because we will live in that future. And I know I don't want to live in a future where there's parasitic electronic devices that are, forcing people, giving them suggestions of what to buy and what not to buy, what to do, what not to do. And that is why we create these retreats. The Plum Village retreats started way before there were smartphones. I saw a picture recently of Thai and Sister Shan Kong in the new hamlet, and they were looking at the first computer. Was it Zoom were you showing me? No. Somebody was showing me recently. We were on a tour in Canada, and they had these very early pictures of Thai and Sister Shan Kong, and Thai looking very curiously at the computer screen. It's like 1994 or 93. And the one lay friend is showing Thai, okay, this is how it works. And I remember as a novice, I was working in the registration office. So right away when I became a monk, I was asked to work on a computer. I thought, here, I left it all behind. I left behind my laptop. I didn't have a smartphone. And then right away, as soon as I start in Upper Hamlet, please work in the registration office. Answer the emails of people wanting to come. Because they'd only recently started receiving emails. Before that, it was written letters when you wanted to come. Imagine that, if you had to come to Deer Park. You write a handwritten letter asking to come here. So they recently had put in computers to run the registration system. And I remember that one day Thai was in Upper Hamlet and he came to use the computer in the registration office. And I was walking by the office. I was not in it, but I walked by and I looked in and I saw Thai using the computer. And it was one of the few times I saw Thai using a computer. And it's fascinating. Thai would sit and read. And then after a few minutes, he would pick up his hand and put it on the mouse, and then move it, and click, and then he put his hand down. And then he would read for another few minutes. Yeah. Wow. And I saw how many people come to our retreats and they have a lot of difficulty with the practice of following their breathing without changing their breath. Many people report that. They say, how do I be aware of my breath and follow my breathing without changing it? And what I realize is that we are so accustomed to having our hand on the mouse or the trackpad or whatever it is. And we see the little pointer in the screen and we're controlling it, we're moving it around. And we get used to this kind of extension of our mind, right? We move the mouse and then we see the pointer moving. And so it's very difficult for us to attend to something without controlling it. We've actually conditioned ourselves to have to control everything that is within our visual field, just like the little pointer of the mouse. That was my insight I got. So that I saw in myself that I needed to let go of that need to control my breath, but instead just allow the breath to happen naturally and bring attention to it with gentleness and care, not try to make it go longer or slower, deeper or more shallow, but just recognize how it is and bring awareness to it. So this interaction with the computer, the interaction with the smartphone, it's just for us to look deeply in our daily lives and see, how is this upsetting the balance? How are we feeding these seeds of craving, for example? It doesn't have to be a click-through ad to water the seed of craving in our consciousness. Even just when you see somebody, you go out and you see somebody walking around with the phone, and you think, oh, that's the latest iPhone. Time to update. Where does that thought come from? Like who is the one telling you to update your phone? That you need to get a new one. How has it become that we are like become like the operating system? we want to update this human being, update this body. Can we go and plug in and do a software update? Well, the closest thing I know is to come to Deer Park or Plum Village and come on a retreat. That's what we're doing. We're getting an update. But the way you get a software update is not passive. You just get it like, you plug in and you just sit there and you can read the news or something while you're getting the update. No. You have to be active. You have to take initiative in how you live your life. I was just reading one of my favorite books by Thai, which is the Pocket Thich Nhat Hanh. I don't know if you've ever seen this book, but it's really, really lovely. Marvin McClay edited it. It's very beautiful English. And for many years I carry it around, and whenever I have to lead an activity, and I'm like, I don't know what to talk about, I just open that book to a random page, and it's just such beautiful English rendition of Thai's teaching. And so I was reading in the book just before I came down here, just simple things. When you eat your food, don't eat your projects. So simple. And yet that's what we do. We're thinking about all kinds of different things when we're eating our food. When you walk, just walk. Enjoy your step. Don't get pulled away by the past and the future. Very simple practices. So when I read that, then as I walked down here to the meditation hall today, I thought, I don't need to worry about what I'm going to talk about. What I need to do is enjoy my steps. Every step that I take from my room, walking down the beautiful new paved road that we have, as I going by the valley and the chaparral, and the kids running by, everyone packing their cars, getting ready to go home, and then just enjoy this moment. Because in a few moments, in a few hours, we will be leaving Deer Park. And what a pity if we're just caught in thinking about leaving. And what if I get caught up in that rushing energy? Then I cannot do much to help you as far as giving a Dhamma talk is concerned. So I just do exactly like Thai says. I just forget about the past and the future. I have things that I wish I had done better in the past. But I know how to let go of those things. Not to continue to dwell on them over and over and over again in my thinking. I have aspirations for this world. I have aspirations for Deer Park. Things I would love to see. I want to see a school of interbeing. To have kids here around the year, nearby the monastery. Such a beautiful dream. If I think about that all the time, then I cannot enjoy my step. And then what is the point of a school of interbeing? There's no point. What will the kids learn if the monks and nuns are rushing around? So I've had to learn to train myself that it's not we don't act in order to realize the ends and sacrifice the means, but the means are the end. There is no path to happiness. Happiness is the way. And so even I have a lot of dreams and aspirations for our community, for all of you. Even we do it together, the monks and nuns, we have dreams together. But we also have to let go of those dreams and aspirations in order to just enjoy this present moment, when we're standing on the earth, enjoying the beautiful sunshine, enjoying the community around us. This is beautiful. And it's an act of resistance. This is a profound, profound act of resistance, what we are doing right here. Don't think for a minute that, of course, we need people to be out in the streets. We need people to come together and say that we will not accept, authoritarianism. We will not accept that they cut our freedom. But don't think for a moment that sitting here, you're doing anything less than a profound act of resistance. Yesterday, in the beginning a new practice that I helped facilitate it with Sister Titi, in the small meditation hall. The families would come into the center of the circle and share loving speech with each other, water the flowers of each other, the parents watering the flowers of the children, even the children watering the flowers of the parents. And I think one of the moms, she'll be okay that I say, or repeat one thing she shared, which was that, thank you so much for supporting me to come to Deer Park Monastery. This is my Disneyland. This is my Disneyland, she said. And I thought, that's so beautiful. I'm so happy that they chose to come here and not to Disneyland. It's not because I want to compete with Disneyland. It's because I recognize the joy in the transformation in that statement. We have so much agency over what we choose to do with our lives. Every moment, we have so much agency, and yet we just do like everyone else does. It's a mystery. We have such fear of non-conformity. As a young person, as a young man, I was very disturbed by what I observed growing up in the United States, I have to say. When I finished college, I didn't know what to do to help. I didn't have this practice. I hadn't encountered the Dhamma. And so, because I didn't know really what to do, I said, I just have to get out. And so I called up a friend that I met the summer before and who lived in Dublin. And I said, I want to go to Ireland. And she said, come stay with my family. And so I did. I stayed in this working class neighborhood, Cabra. Anybody know Cabra in Dublin? No? Okay. It's a very kind of bit rough on the edges neighborhood of Dublin. And her stepfather had grown up in the house that they lived in. And he just passed away actually a few weeks ago. And so I stayed there for more than a month and a half. And her little brothers and sisters, they shared a room, and they actually moved out of the room and stayed with Tanya, my friend, all together in a room so that I could have this little room to myself. I felt so kind of embarrassed because they had so little. Just tiny, tiny little house. The houses right next to each other like that. And I felt very, very grateful to them because I didn't know what to do I felt something was building in here that now I feel the Dhamma responds to. But at that time, I didn't know how to respond to it. And so I ended up, I taught English for a year in Spain. But I didn't feel it was very interesting, but it's kind of a little bit boring. And it certainly wasn't my deep aspiration to, increase the level of English speaking language in Spain. That wasn't my deep aspiration. I was trying to understand this kind of something I couldn't put in words. And I got involved with young people who were trying to resist fascism in Europe. And I didn't even know what fascism was. I had to, study, like, what is that? And one day I was walking through Madrid, and I saw, it's I think 20th of November, if you're ever in Spain, 20N. And that is, on the one hand, the fascists, they go to the royal palace, and they remember Franco. And they have all the memorabilia about the fascist regime in Spain. And then on the other side of the city, are the anti-fascists. And they're like punkies with like long hair and lots of piercing. And I have to say, I enjoyed being with them a lot more. And so I went walking with the anti-fascists, and they come in, they meet the fascists. And I ended up living for more than 2 years in these anti-fascist, anarchist communities. And they try to, within the shell of the old society, they try to live a life of resistance. And because I didn't know this, I didn't have a spiritual path yet. So that was the best, I was doing my best. Because I really believed in freedom, and I believed in resisting the forces that try to hate and be full of anger and violence. And so that seemed like, I didn't know, but I felt something good, and I wanted to be with that group of people. And I lived in those communities for a few years in Spain and France, and even in an organic farming community, an old abandoned village that a group of young people had occupied and rebuilt the buildings and the bread. We baked bread together. We grew organic food in the fields. And one of my deepest experiences was actually when there was a split in the community, this organic farming community in the foothills of the Pyrenees. Like one group, they wanted to cut down more trees and grow more food, because in the Franco's time they had planted all these pine trees in the fields, and it was a way of making the fields acidic, so you couldn't grow your own food, and to try to force the people out of the mountains into work in factories in the cities. And so they felt a lot of anger towards that, so they wanted to cut down the trees and grow crops and sell them in the market. And the other part of the town, we were about 40 of us, maybe 45, living in this town. They wanted to do like green tourism, invite people to come up, kind of like we have with the Happy Farm. Come on Saturdays and get your hands in the dirt and grow food and learn to heal yourself in that way. And so these two different groups, and there's a split. They couldn't decide. And so one of them, they left the town and they went to another town on the other side of the mountain. And that's when I learned in a very real way that community living is not easy, especially when you don't have guidelines, you don't have a shared, clear values and ethics. And so I felt quite lost after that, because I felt like I was living in paradise. I was living the dream, living in an organic farming community in the foothills of the Pyrenees, and cooking our food together and growing our crops together. And yet we could not. Somehow there's still a split. There's still tension. And so I spent many, many years after that reflecting on why. Why did that happen? Why can we not realize to live in harmony as human beings on the earth? And that's when I got so lucky to meet this community and learn about the 5 mindfulness trainings. And I was like, yes, that's it. That is it. Without a core set of values, that the community agrees on, and not only agrees on, but recites regularly and reflects on, and has Dhamma sharing about, and then grows and adapts, because the 5 mindfulness trainings are not static. Just a few years ago, we updated the 3rd mindfulness training to include the input from non-binary folks, transgender, gay, the LGBTQ community, right? So it's a growing body of guidelines. And when we recite it in the morning, when we were reciting it this morning, I feel happier. It's a guided meditation to sit together as a community and recite the trainings. This morning I was telling my roommate, Brother Nyatri, I said, the International Declaration of Human Rights is very wonderful, very inspiring. But do people get together and recite it? Has anybody ever read the International Declaration of Human Rights from beginning to end? How many? I have. Okay, not very many. But all of us got to hear the 5 mindfulness trainings this morning, right? So this is the thing that when Thai introduced a version of the 5 trainings to UNESCO in 2000 with the Millennium Goals, that was Thai's kind of doing acupressure on the United Nations. He said, yes, it's all wonderful what you say, but people are not living that. And so how can an institution be effective if the people who subscribe to its aspirations are not actually living and applying those values, those visions? And so that is why we tell you over and over again that the mindfulness trainings, in order to remain effective, you have to recite them regularly with the Sangha. And if you can't find a Sangha, then you recite them by yourself, because that is how we continue to grow. And that is what I feel I found in this community that I couldn't find in the other communities when I was trying to find my way and how to resist the culture of violence and hatred. Maybe we can listen to a sound of the bell. There's one more funny story. So when I lived for a couple of years in these anti-fascist communities, and we did a lot of direct action. I learned from them what it means to really put your values into action. And I had some of the brothers and sisters, the older ones, will remember when I came to Plum Village, I had a big beard like this, big like mane of hair. And so maybe I looked a little bit scary. But I remember I came back, and after that experience of experiencing a split in this community that I was living in, I really felt lost, and I felt disillusioned. I felt that somehow I got the insight, it's not through changing political systems. That if we change to some form of anarchy, that will somehow solve the problem. Because if we don't know how to live together, a bunch of anarchists in the mountain growing our crops together, then how do we expect to have a change of government? right? So I felt quite lost, and I also decided to part ways with my partner at that time, and I came back to the United States, and luckily my mom was very kind. She allowed me to stay with her. I hadn't lived at home for 8 years. And I went through a kind of depression because I didn't see a way out. I knew, I was very aware of the climate crisis. I've been paying attention to, anybody ever heard of Earth First? The Earth First movement? I was I was kind of like a big fan. I was in our little bookshop kiosk in the squat in Paris reading every issue of Earth First. If you don't know about Earth First, I really recommend the book Overstory. Is that what it's called? Has anyone read Overstory? Yeah. Yeah, it's a very beautifully written book about that whole movement. It's a fictionalized version, but it's very close to it, and I think it really gets the heart and the spirit of that movement. The book is by Richard Powers, Overstory. And so I came back to the U.S. and I felt so disillusioned. I didn't want to live a life that would be contributing to the ecological catastrophe. I saw that in America, just by the way we live our lives, we are actually exacerbating the situation. And so it comes down to looking at every part of our life, even whether we decide to have a family and have children, which is, I know, a very difficult decision that some people make. And I also made to decide to become a monk and not have children. And I know many couples in our community have made that decision as well. And that's for each family to decide. But it's difficult when you look at the statistics. Yeah. So we know that just by the way of living our life, we are out of balance with the earth. We are out of balance with our ecosystems. And so I didn't see a way out. I felt trapped. And I didn't yet have the teaching from Thai. The way out is in. So I felt trapped and imprisoned. And I remember my mom was a teacher her whole life, and that's part of the reason I'm so inspired by creating a school here at Deer Park, because I see all the good that she's done in her life as a teacher, and also all the difficulties and challenges that she encountered as a teacher in public schools her whole life. And so the funny story is that one day she invited me to come to her school, and she had been an elementary school teacher, but then she became a library media specialist, right? So that way she would get to read books to all the kids in all the grades in elementary school, and so that was closer to her dream. And so she was running the library in a fourth and fifth grade school in Connecticut. And so I went into the school and I was helping her do some things. But then I was spending so much time inside the school, I said, I'm going to go for a walk. And so, so I remember it's like big bearded, young guy with the kind of mane of hair. And I went walking outside the school, and I'd been to her school before, many years before, and I saw that they had clear-cut a whole stand of forest in order to build a new parking lot. And I remember I walked across the parking lot, and I stood there for a few moments, and I was getting angry. My seed of anger was getting touched. My perceptions were feeding it, because I was thinking about all the cars that we don't need to have, that cause us to cut down these trees and build a parking lot. And then I continued walking down, because I knew that somewhere in the valley there was a stream. And I thought, it would be very pleasant to walk through the forest and maybe just put my hands in the stream. wash my face. And so I did. I went down to the stream, and I was standing on a stone in the middle of the stream, and then I thought I heard something up on the bank on the other side, and I look up, and this looked like a policewoman. She's crawling, she's kind of unsteady, and she's walking through the forest. And then suddenly I hear behind me, "Don't move!" And I turn around, and there's a policeman right behind me. I'm standing on the bank looking at me. I'm standing on a stone in the middle of the stream. I don't know what he thought I was going to do. Steal a rock? Put your hands behind your body. Keep your hands behind you. I said, sure, of course. And then I stepped across the stones, and I stood on the side, and then he kind of frisked me, and I didn't have anything. Eventually, I don't know how, but the policewoman on the other side, she managed to cross the stream and come over, and then they made me walk in front of them up through the forest with my hands in sight all the way back to the front of the school, which I just left maybe 20 minutes before. And standing outside the school was the school principal. My mom was in tears. And then the police chief. And I was just kind of dumbfounded. I said, I don't know what is going on here. And then the police chief was very apologetic, and he said, "Oh, now we know you're the son of one of the teachers. We apologize." And then he said, "Welcome back to America." Yeah. So it turns out that a couple of days before, there had been a man walking. This was like academic park, where there are many schools, public schools. So there's a elementary school, 4th, 5th grade, middle school, high school. They're all in this one area in Bethel, Connecticut. And some man was reported to have flashed a child. Like he doesn't have any clothes on, but he has a coat, and then so anyway, there was that report of a bearded man. Yeah. And then apparently the janitor of the school, he was looking out the back, kind of the backstage of the school, and he saw me stop. And what he saw was that he saw a bearded man peeing under a car, which I was, but in his perception, this is what he saw. What I did, I just stopped there, and I looked at and I was watching my anger coming up. And so he, called the police, and so this happened. And I tell that story just to bring awareness, because that was just one of many things that helped me to see that what happens when we live in a state of fear, and when that fear becomes collective, and that we don't trust our own neighbors, our own friends, our own, sometimes young people. We know the culture of violence here in America, and we know why that fear is there. But if we're not careful and we don't learn how to take care of our fear, how to embrace it with mindfulness when it comes up in our mind consciousness, then when someone comes and says that they will take care of everything, that they will be the big daddy who solves all of our problems, there will be enough collective support for that to happen. And I felt that very powerfully back in 2000. That was the year 2000. And I saw that because in America we haven't had a lived experience. I should say, those of us in the dominant, mainly white culture, have not had a lived experience. Most of us who are minorities, we have had a lived experience of authoritarianism. In fact, it's part of our daily lives. But now, those of us who maybe haven't experienced that, or have maybe not paid attention or closed our eyes to that, we are starting to see that, and that is why so many people are walking out in the streets. So, when I say that coming on this retreat is an act of resistance, I mean it very deeply. Every which way that we reestablish connections with each other, come together, rebuild our local communities, get off of the screens. It doesn't mean we have to get rid of our smartphone, get rid of our computer. We start to create boundaries, reestablish balance in our mind, spiritual balance. Notice how we are feeding our perceptions through our way of consuming the news, the media. When you rest, just rest. Don't turn on the TV. Don't pick up the smartphone. Allow your body to practice deep relaxation. That is a radical act of resistance. Nobody is owning your mind at that time. If you are able to come back to your breathing, come back to your body, you are resisting the ones who want to sell you products, that want to sell you a kind of commodified stupor, send you into a stupor of consumerism that just quietly shuttles you off into your grave. Be awake. Wake up. That is an invitation. We are doing it here at Deer Park, and we want to build communities of awakening everywhere. So we are starting, as Brother Phap shared, Simplicity Hamlet here at the foot of Deer Park, so that not only monastics can live long term, but also families, couples, lay friends who want to live a life of service and a life of awakening. You're happy to live simply. You don't accept the standards. You don't need to have a 401k and all these things. But you're able to step out of that system and try a new way of living, a way based on trust and relationships and building community. That is what the radical experiment we are doing here at Deer Park. I know they're doing in Plum Village as well, and many of our monasteries. We are opening that door. We have a deep faith that the Dhamma can transform this situation, and the practice of the Dhamma. That is the key, I feel. The difference between 1930s Germany and what we're experiencing now. We have the Dhamma, and we have diversity. We have all of our ancestors. And they came to this country to be free. And so we will not accept anything less. But to do that, sometimes it takes going beyond our comfort zone. It means putting boundaries on what we consume and learning how to trust our body, trust our mind. And that is why we spend so much time offering these retreats. It's not because we want to just support the monastery with retreats. It's because Thai has a vision for how to transform violence in the collective consciousness. And we are practicing to realize that. When you come on a retreat, you're contributing to that. When you go home and you build a Sangha, you're contributing to that. When you practice stopping and coming back to your breath, you are contributing to transforming that violence. Because the store consciousness happens at an individual level, but it also happens at a collective level. And right away, with your practice of mindfulness, you are transforming the collective consciousness. And that is something real you can experience. And we've all experienced it here this week together with the energy of peace and mindfulness we create together. So I wish the best for you. I wish that you have a wonderful and safe trip home, and that we continue to walk on this path together as brothers, sisters, siblings on the path. Thank you for listening.